This is a 2011 Hyundai Tucson. It's known in some markets as the iX35. And this car is back once again in our shop. This time it's for the alternator. The alternator for this car is buried in a very hard to reach location. Now I'm going to show you some tips that if you follow them, it will make this job go a lot easier for you. We are going to do it all from the top without going underneath the car. And I'm going to show you exactly how. Now, the question you might be asking is, how do you know that your alternator needs replacement? Well, one sure indicator is if your battery light on the dash is on, this means your alternator is not charging. So if your battery light on the dash ever comes on, you only have a very short distance to drive, and the car will just die. Try to get to a safe space as quickly as possible and pull over, get out of the way of everything, and then call for help. The first step, as with any alternator job, is disconnect this battery negative terminal right here. It has a 10mm bolt on it. Loosen it and remove the terminal. The next step, before I do anything else, is I'm going to take this floor jack and I put a little block of wood on it, and I'm going to slide it right under the engine oil pan. With the weight of the engine supported from underneath by the floor jack, I'm going to remove this motor mount bracket, and it has 3 bolts here. Well, 2 nuts and 1 bolt on the engine side, and 1 nut right on top of the motor mount. With the nuts and bolts removed, this comes right off. Now, it does not hurt at all to also remove this motor mount itself. So there, with the bolts out, this comes out too very easily. So, with the motor mount and the bracket removed, I have very easy access to this bolt right here for the tensioner, 17mm, and it's very easy to move it, so you can loosen the belt and remove it, and it'll also make it very easy to reinstall the belt. Now, don't worry, I am going to give you a belt routing diagram at the end of this video, so you can see how to put this belt back on. So I've already removed the alternator, and don't worry, in a moment I'm going to show you how you remove it and you put it back in. But what I wanted to show you, and this is very important for you to realize, is that this bottom mounting point for the alternator is just a slot. It's not a through hole. So in other words, the bottom bolt of the alternator does not have to be removed entirely from the alternator. It can be loosened, and then you can slip the entire thing off. Let me show you. So there, I am giving you a view of the bottom bolt of the alternator, how it would be passing through the ears of the alternator and just sitting in that slot. And it can be lifted straight out of that slot without removing it from the alternator. I'm not saying that it will be easy to pull the alternator out. You're going to have to yank on it like all get out in order to get it to move. So another thing that makes this job go a lot easier is this idler pulley right here. Just remove it and get it out of the way when you go to remove the alternator. It just has a 15mm hex bolt on the front. And there is the view with the pulley off. I've slipped the alternator back in. This is to show you the orientation that I put it in. And what I've done is I've lifted the engine up just as far as it will go with the floor jack. And this creates enough space here so you can take the alternator in this orientation and just push it through this gap right here. And it only takes a little bit of wiggling, and it'll go straight through, and it'll land in this orientation, and then you have to reorient it back into the correct orientation. In the correct orientation of the alternator, down in there is just like this. You have this little fastening point, mounting point for the wire harness, and it faces to the front and downward when it's in the car. To make this alternator go in a little bit easier, I'm going to take this flat file and I'm going to file off just a little bit, just a tiny little bit of this little protrusion here on the bottom ear. And I'm going to do the same thing on the corresponding one on the top ear. Here's the alternator back in place, and how I did it was, as you saw before I slipped it down in there, I had filed down the ears to make them easier to fit. I had the bottom bolt, the through bolt, all the way through the ears, and I fitted into the slot. It wiggled in, and then I just slammed this alternator backwards so that it lined up with the top mounting bracket, and I threaded the top bolt through as you see it there. Okay, so what remains now is of course to reinstall this idler pulley. You can see where its boss goes right there. And then I'm going to have to do the connections from the back side. And let me give you a little pointer there. So when you have the alternator in the car, it's going to be oriented almost exactly like this. And you're going to want to reach around to the back side of the alternator so you can connect the eye onto this stud. I have this little tiny wrench. The nut is 12 millimeter to reach around down under here. And I can do it all by reaching around this way. I can't see what I'm doing, but I do it by feel. And what you have remaining are these two connectors. One of them is for the alternator, the other one is for the AC. And it's pretty obvious which one is which. They only fit one way. For the belt routing, which is genuinely a little bit tricky, I'm going to try to explain it as best I can. So you see in the back there, that's the power steering pulley. See it right here. And in the bottom there, that's the crankshaft pulley. Now the belt wraps all the way around the power steering pulley, over the tensioner pulley, and down to the crankshaft pulley. It goes around the bottom of the crankshaft pulley to the AC pulley down on the bottom that you can't see. It goes around the AC pulley and back up to the alternator. Wraps the alternator, and this is a little bit tricky part here. You have that smooth idler pulley down there, so it goes over the alternator, down under that smooth idler, wraps the smooth idler, comes back up over this top idler, and from there all the way back to the power steering pulley, and that completes the loop of the serpentine belt. You're going to have to do this with the motor mount off. The car starts up smoothly, no noise from the belt or from the motor mount, and most importantly, no battery light, and a little peek at the view.